Hello and welcome to Season 1, Episode 3 of Conversations with Vijeet, wherein I talk with batchmates of mine who pursued MBA in Sports Management from Deakin University. For this episode, I've got Niddhi Mehta with me. Niddhi, hi, how are you? The stars have finally
I'm
aligned.
They really have. Hi, I'm good. How are you? Thank you so much
I'm
for
good.
having me. I'm really sorry
My
it's taken
pleasure.
this long.
No, it's fine. It's all right. So, yeah, shall I begin with the first question?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So, Nidhi, first up, basic, why sports management and why Deakin?
So I have actually played sport all my life since I was in school, even in college. I was pretty active in sport. I played a lot of basketball, handball at different levels. So sports always been a part of my life. But once I graduated from my bachelor's, around that time, I was sort of thinking about what next? What is the next thing I should do? And I think that was the time when sports management was sort of just coming up and it was something new that was sort of being introduced, especially in India, if not overseas. At that time, funnily, my mother was the person who sort of told me that why don't you study sports management? Like it's something new. It's you have been playing all your life. Why don't you sort of explore something like that? Which is quite different from most parents, I guess, that you would see. So she was saying maybe you should try it. Maybe you can apply and see what that's going to look like. So I was like, okay, why not? Let me just look it up. And yeah, that's pretty much where it started. I was actually looking to go to the US initially, and Australia was my second option. So I had applied to the US and too much paperwork. It was just crazy. And after a point, I was like, I cannot do this. And there was a lot of back and forth, even with universities there. So Beacon seemed like the best possible option in terms of the curriculum. I looked up largely what I wanted to do was have a curriculum that was not hyper focused on one particular aspect of sport, right? I felt like I wanted to learn a lot more about different aspects of sport, and I think that was much broader. And I think Deakin was one of the universities that actually offered that, which is why then it ended up being the option post the US and Australia was my option, and then Deakin sort of became the option then. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, how was the entire application process like, uh, especially the visa? Did you arrive on time there?
I did. So I did my whole application through IDP and they helped me. I think a lot of us had IDP to help us around that time. And I surprisingly didn't have a lot of issues with the visa. So I did end up coming in, I think around the 4th, which was a couple of days before the week.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, so I did manage to arrive on time. So I surprisingly and thankfully didn't have any issues with the visa because I do know a lot of people in our batch had like visa stuff happening and because of which they came in late as well. So yeah, thankfully didn't have that. But yeah, IDP sort of helped me with sorting that whole thing out, even though you have to do all the paperwork. But like, yeah, it was pretty seamless in that space. Yeah.
Right. So, how was the experience for the 2 years doing the course, managing part-time work and other volunteering things as well?
I think it was good. It was good. I didn't realize until after we left uni how much we did during uni as well. So uh, I think for me, the course was really interesting because of like I said, the curriculum was something that I sort of enjoyed in terms of how broad it was, right? And the different aspects of sport that you could sort of learn. So for me, I think what stood out was there was like understanding the business side of sport, but also like understanding theoretical and practical stuff. Um, some of the I like athlete management a lot. I think it was a very fun elective because of how it was designed, how the elective was designed. Even though I was never looking at becoming an athlete manager, but I really enjoyed the entire process and even online marketing. I enjoyed event management because that's something I really wanted to learn, and sports development. So I know there were bits and pieces that I sort of liked about uni, but yeah, I think it was also tough from a working standpoint because the time when we were in uni, I think we were the first initial batches of sports management, which I think organizations were sort of still getting used to the idea of working closely with universities to offer any sort of internships or opportunities. I think they were still getting around to that point, which was, I think, towards the end of our course, right? When they actually started, like, I'm sure you would have also seen, they actually started like offering opportunities. So it
Uh,
was a lot of like
hmm.
looking at where can we volunteer, what is the next, where do I work part time. So yeah, I think it was multiple things at the time that I sort of uh, I guess most of us sort of struggled with in terms of looking for work and looking for something that would actually be more fruitful. So yeah, I it was good. It was tough, but it was good as well. Learned a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So, how did you find work after the course?
Sure. So I sort of did multiple jobs even during the course and even like in terms of after. So, of course, in the initial stages, I did a lot of volunteering work. Then one of my first few jobs was with MSAC and Melbourne Sports Centers. I think that's what they're called now. So, doing an operations role there. That was my first few jobs, and I did uh, volunteer with Collingwood Football Club. So I was a match day volunteer and usually was around the membership booth that they were managing on the day of the match. So through that, I got a role in Collingwood in the membership department itself. So that's where it sort of started, where it was interesting because AFL is pretty big in Australia. So it was, and Collingwood is one of the bigger clubs in the AFL as well. So it was a great opportunity to sort of start with, which I think was my foot in the door at the time. And along with that, of course, there were multiple other volunteering jobs that I did. There was, um, I can't even remember some of them. There was like, I remember I did something with Bicycle Network. I did something with some other event thing. There was a Deakin had like a Deakin Dash. I sort of just volunteered there. So I was just doing anything that I could find, get my hands on. But post Collingwood, I think that was the time when I started doing multiple jobs. So I found something with Melbourne Football Club as well, but that was again more event focused, more match day focused. So they would do a lot of activations. So I was a part of those, which was actually a lot of fun. They had different things happening. They would have stuff like you can go onto the field with what they're called mascots, I think, for the kids. So that's what you would do, or they would have clinics that would happen. So along with the membership role that I was doing at Collingwood, I had a completely different role with Melbourne Football Club. So that was more match day. Then I sort of sometimes would still pick up shifts at MSAC. So it was like me doing just multiple things. From now I'm thinking about I don't know how I managed 10 different things at the time, but I think we were just really trying to do and learn everything we could. And then along with Melbourne Football Club, after that, I'm just trying to like think of my timelines because I think I did multiple things. Um, I then what's that? I think there was something else around that time as well, which I can't at the top of my head remember. But then eventually, um, I, s- I moved to Melbourne Victory. So that is more of the soccer football club, which was in the membership department itself again. And I think that was again a great experience because it completely different sport. Although membership does sort of customer experience, membership was more or less the roles that I had done even then. So Melbourne Victory I was there for quite a while, at least over a year almost. And at the same time, I would do certain shifts with Melbourne Football Club, and then AO was one thing that I did at least 2 years off. So Australian Open was uh, again I was in the customer experience role, so on the precinct all the time. I think it's one of the best events I worked at. It's one of my favorite events. And then I did the Australian Grand Prix as well. So I was doing accreditation. So I just did that for one of the Grand Prix. I don't remember which year that was, but it was uh, that was another thing that I did. So Yeah, multiple stuff, different roles. AO, even when I moved back in 2019, I went back for the 2020 Australian Open right before the pandemic hit. So the timing of it was quite, quite close to before things went south all over the world. But yeah, so those were the multiple roles. I'm pretty sure. I really feel like I'm forgetting something, but I did just too many different things. And I think the idea for me was to just try my hand at different things and see what actually interested me or what is sticking. Um, yeah, so that's where I got to, especially in Australia. And post my time in Australia, when I came back, I took a short break for a couple of months. Then I was looking for work in India, obviously, and I applied to Dreams at Go. So they are a sports travel experience company. The idea is basically for anyone wanting to watch live sport, we facilitate that. So it's right from ticketing to everything in terms of travel that you manage. They are a company under Dream Sports. If you've heard of Dream 11, so they're pretty big in India. So um, Team Setco is one of their companies within the same banner. And at that time, they were sort of starting off. So it seemed like, again, another opportunity because clearly, for some reason, I don't know why I ended up doing a lot of sales and customer experience roles. So that sort of sat within that. Although sales is not something I fully enjoy, but I was saying, let me just try it out, see how it goes. Uh, Start with something in India because I realized it's completely different from the industry that I had worked in, and I feel like a large part of our working lives, at least, was in Australia, and then India is a completely different market that you're operating in. People operate differently as well. So I think through most of the pandemic, that was what I did. We just did a lot of different things because I was at the end of the day, we were in a travel space in the pandemic. That was not the best place to be,
Yeah.
but like we did a lot of other stuff. Did a lot of other stuff, had to pivot temporarily. So it was interesting in terms of adapting to what we could do. The team that I worked with also were pretty experienced in sports travel. So it was great in terms of learning. I met a lot of people. So post that, then again, I was looking to still figure out what do I want to do next, right? I still wanted to probably do something more event focused. Um, and yeah, that's when sort of I was just delving into things. Sports development was something I was always interested in. I was always thinking about women's sport. How can I be more involved in women's sport, right? And that's when Sisters in Sweat sort of came around. I was taking a break. I was thinking maybe I'll take a few more months. I'll try. I was having different conversations to see what else I could do. And they were looking for someone in Bombay. So that's when I was like, okay, let me try this out. Because I had heard of them. They're an organization based out of Bangalore. And they had just about started off in Bombay, and it was a couple of months down the line then. And I've always it's like the concept was really interesting to me, and I was like, maybe let me see if I can apply and see what that looks like. So that's where Sisters in Sweat started, and now that's where I am at pretty much since then. Yeah.
So, can you tell more about Sisters in Sweat? The name sounds quite interesting.
So, Sisters in Sweat, the idea of the entire organization is to, in a sense, get women back into sports. So, my
Okay.
co-founders pretty much the way it started was them sort of on hanging out with a bunch of friends. One night out, one of them said, "Oh, let's go and sort of." So one of my co-founders is a footballer, Tanvi Hans, and the other one is a fitness trainer, Shweta Subaya. So they sort of told Tanvi that, okay, you know what, let we want to learn football. Why don't we do a session? And it turns out that friends told friends, and 17 women sort of showed up that morning. And then it became a weekend on weekend thing. And then eventually that's how the both of them sort of realized there's a massive gap where women don't have a safe space to sort of play. Like I think for men it's quite easy to have a bunch of friends, oh let's go play football, but for women that's not a very common thing that you would see. Also, a lot of commitments turn up for women, usually, especially in a country like ours, where family, work, everything else, there are 10 things that you sort of juggle. But coming back into sport is not something that's seen as a common thing to do. Fitness is not the first thing that usually women think about. So uh, they they felt that that's the gap that we could fill, where women have a space to have a community of other women that they can sort of play sport with, or a space that they can come back to sport to, or a place where they can actually learn sport, right? There are a lot of women within our community who of different ages, maybe post 30, post even 40, who are learning sport for the first time in their lives. And that's just amazing to watch, because that's not something that they would have otherwise done. So that that's pretty much the idea, where sport and wellness sort of become a thing, and a community is a safe space where they can sort of, a non-judgmental space where they can come and sort of engage in sport. So started off in Bangalore, and now slowly trying to expand in the country, Bombay being one of the first cities that they are looking at. So yeah, I pretty much manage operations uh, around Bombay. So we set up training sessions across different sport formats. We do like social stuff outside of um, sport, which could be like either fitness-based workshops, or it could just be social events like, oh, let your hair down, do a karaoke night, or let's do something else which is a lot more social as well. So it's the community aspect, but it's also like involving making sport more accessible to women in a sense. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And having been involved in women's sports for some time now,
Mm.
uh, can you like just enlighten us where women's sports in India stand? Like, where does it stand in India? Are things improving?
I think the space that I operate in is largely recreational, but in from what I'm seeing of women's sport in India, of course, I think it's growing. Cricket has become quite massive, and the Indian cricket team, the women's team, is doing so well. So I see that that change is slowly coming about, and I think it's also um, a global thing, right? When women's sport is sort of growing globally, that ripple effect is India is seeing it as well. And I think I would say that the cricket team is one that they have done so well for themselves that it's sort of, you sort of see it a lot more now. I don't, maybe with other sports it's yet to pick up, but we do have a lot of women athletes who are like at the forefront of sport in India. You'll see Mary Kom, there's PV Sindhu, there's Saina Nehwal. There's so many of them who are in a sport that's not cricket, right? That are also now sort of pioneering a lot of things and within sport in India. And I think that's pretty much how it would work, where a lot of women who have played sport before, who have been playing sport even now, who are professional athletes or athletes that have returned to sport or returned within the system to sort of grow the sport. That's pretty much what Sisters in Sweat, in terms of my co-founder, sort of tried to do. Where Tanvi is a professional footballer, but the idea for her was to sort of, okay, how can I grow sport for women? And I see that for football also, if you see Aditi Chauhan is pretty big. And a lot of women and girls also know of her, or know of them. So I think it's picking up. We have a long way to go, 100%. But it's definitely much better than when we played sport for sure, or the opportunities that we had. I think girls nowadays have a lot more of them, which is great to see. And it's great to see a lot of women coming back into the system and trying to change that as well. So yeah.
And in terms of infrastructure, especially for women, is it
Yeah.
good enough in Mumbai now? I've heard of one story about, I don't know who it was. It was some Indian women's cricketer.
Okay.
She once said that she used to get down at Churchgate station, and since
Yeah.
she didn't have the changing room facility for females at the ground, she used to go to some house near Churchgate, change over there, and then go out to play, then come back, change over there, and go back home from Churchgate. So, in terms of facilities, is it changing for women?
I think infrastructure in general is sort of an issue in Bombay in some ways, growing, but still an issue. And I don't think that's entirely fully changed for women. I still feel like um, there is no extra attention given to the fact that, okay, maybe we need to have more washrooms, or we need to have cleaner washrooms, or we need to have spaces where women can sort of change, or even multiple things, right? So I don't think that we are still an afterthought in some cases. So I don't think that's fully changed yet. I think infrastructure will take some time. But I'm hoping that that changes as well. I'm sure that during major events that happen, there is some amount of attention given to it. But in a general sense, I still think that from on a day-to-day basis, athletes that even train daily probably still have the same issue of a washroom or access to a changing room very easily. Yeah. So
Yeah.
at least I haven't seen that yet change. So yeah.
Right. Mhm. So, having worked in the industry now, I think just including Australia,
Yeah.
you have been working for, I guess, more than 8 years. So,
Yeah, almost.
yeah,
It's
what are
like
the
a
lessons?
long time.
So, what are the
Yeah.
lessons that you have learned, and what advice would you give to an aspiring sports management professional?
I think that's actually a very tough one. I think what I have learned so far is to just keep going, right? You may not always know. I think there are a lot of people who come into the industry with the idea that, oh, I love sport or I'm passionate about sport, which is great, but passion can take you only this far. And it's okay, even if you don't have clarity on what you'd like to do. I think it's good to try out different things, see what fits for you, what fits best. And I think talk to people in the industry. I think when we started off, we didn't have enough people to advise us on what we could do, on how we can go about things. And I think right now people are a lot more open to talking about how you can go about things, or even helping you out, right? I think there are a lot of people now that you can sort of speak to. So I think reach out to people, talk to people in the industry, see what you can do. So I think that's what I learned, where I feel like uh, not everyone is always going to put you down. There's going to be people who will help you. So the industry is dynamic, the industry is changing. So yeah, I think that's what my advice would be. You can try out different things. It's completely fine. Do it, but network with people, speak to
Right.
people, because I think that's the best thing in our industry, at least, where network really
Actually,
helps and really works. Yeah.
right. Yeah. Even Pranav and Kunal, the whoever, like I had
They said the
before,
same.
both of them said the same thing, and I also agree with them because network
Yeah.
is, yeah, in our industry, like network is like gold. Like you
So
have to
important.
have some kind of network
Yeah.
to get some good opportunities. Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So, would you advise doing a sports management course irrespective of university and location?
Uh, I think, of course, you can, but my advice would be work a little bit in the industry, especially if you are looking to do a master's. One thing that I learned was if I worked a little bit in the industry before I did my master's, I think it would have been a lot more valuable to me, because in terms of application, I would have had a lot more perspective. Or not to say that being in a classroom with people who came from different backgrounds and people who existed in sport in a very different way, or even probably just played sport and never worked in the industry before, had a very different perspective. But yeah, I think that maybe work a little and then study so that you can gain a lot more from what you're learning. Um, yeah, I think that's what I wouldn't advise against it. And I don't think it's ever too late to switch. I think the industry is one, or has at least become one, where we can learn a lot more from people who even don't study sports management, who come from a completely different educational background, do have a lot to offer in terms of skill to the industry. It's just how they apply it. But definitely, if you would like to do sports management, yes, of course, but how you apply it will really matter at the end of the day, because where you work and the work you have done will teach you a lot more. So
Right.
do it, but yeah, do it as a stepping stone is what I would say.
Mm. Right. So, what's ahead for you, Nidhi?
Right now, I think Sisters and Sweat is it because working in women's sport is something that I would like to learn a lot more from. It is a growing space. There is a lot to do, so I would definitely like to learn a lot from here. And it's still I consider it some amount of sport development. So yeah, for now, at least this is where I'm at. Going to try and see what I can learn from here, and then go from there. So right now, nothing that I'm thinking of what's further down the line, just trying to take it step by step, learn from the space that I'm in already, and then see where we go.
All
Yeah.
right, that's nice. So Nidhi, all right, thanks for joining me for thanks for coming on the
Thank
show
you.
and sharing your insights, your thoughts, and yeah,
Thank
all
you
the
so
best for
much
your
for having
future.
me. Thank you. Same to you. It's great. Thank you so much for having me.
No worries, my pleasure. So that's all for this episode. If you like the video, do like and share it, and do subscribe to the channel for more such videos. That's all for this episode, and thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.